Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome your host, Kerrigan.
Welcome to Witch Talk. My name is Kerrigan, and here we are again for a fantastic show. This time, we're going to talk about shamanism. So it's a very, very nice show. We have a fantastic guest again today, as we always have. But before we go there, I wanted to show you some wonderful books that I came across recently. They're very, very good, and obviously one of them would be the book of our guest. It's called The Hollow Bone, A Field Guide to Shamanism, and we're going to talk about it in depth. The other book that it's coming out soon, I think, it's The Scorpion God, Forbidden Wisdom of Belial. Here we go. We all know who this is. This is Mark Allen Smith. It's a fantastic book about the Forbidden Wisdom of Belial. Mark will be here on Witch Talk very, very soon to talk about this fantastic book also. Then I just received from Wiser, which is wonderful, also a fantastic book, The Way of the Oracle, by Diana Paxson. It's a wonderful book. We will have her also on the show to talk about all of these fantastic things. So there you go. That's, I think, all of my things for Witch Talk about books. Let me just show you a little bit of what we have in our Facebook and everything else on the internet. So here we go. This is our Facebook page, and you know that you can actually access the page and watch the show directly from here. You just have to click on Ustream Live, and you are on with us. Now, the other thing is that I kind of almost like I tried last time with Mixlr. It's now functioning. So what I'm doing right now is that I'm recording the show, and then I will do a session with Mixlr. Not live, but I will record it directly, and it will be available to you sound only. Now, the other thing that I wanted to talk to you about is Witch Talk on Google+. Here we are. If you have a Gmail account, just go on Google+. It's an extraordinary way of connecting with people, and we are there also. So if you want to know everything about it, and if you just, you don't do Facebook, maybe you do Google+, and that's basically it. Now, the other thing that I wanted to tell you, it's about my blog. Veneficum is a new blog that it's basically the substitution or the precursor Convenire. Now it's Veneficum, and it's in Portuguese, obviously, if you wanted to check it out. And the thing is that this blog is absolutely private, so if you wanted to be part of it, you have to email me at kerrigan.witch@gmail.com, and then you will have access to it. So basically it's almost like a subscription if you want to read it, and that's basically it. Now that's it. I think we just talked about everything, I guess. Now we're going to talk about something that's very, very interesting. I just love this video. I think that it's a wonderful introduction for our guest here on Witch Talk. So we're going to do that. We're going to watch this fantastic video, and it's a video of Rupert Sheldrake, The Rising of Shamanism, and it's an introduction to shamanism, which I thought that it was a good idea for us to begin with this Witch Talk show. Let me just show it to you.
I think the rise of neo-shamanism is particularly interesting, and the interest in shamanism that we have in the modern world. I haven't personally met very many shamans, but I did have a wonderful experience of actually living with one in the jungles of Orissa in India. A friend of mine was an anthropologist living with a remote tribe there, a tribal culture, he was staying with the shaman, and I actually stayed with an actual shaman in a village, and that actually gave me a lot more feeling for what's going on than reading many books about the subject. What became clear to me, both from reading and from my experience of this shaman and others who I've met in the United States and elsewhere, was that shamans are kind of bridge figures. They're a bridge between the human community and other realms. One other realm is the realm of the dead. So one of the roles of the shaman is to go into trance and to act as a medium through which the ancestors or the dead can speak to the living. But they're also, and I think perhaps more interestingly, the intermediates between around them. This particular shaman, like shamans in those tribal cultures in central India, didn't live in the village itself. He lived on the top of a cliff away from the main village, on the edge of the and he knew much more about animals and plants than other people. He bridged between them and nature. And a traditional role of shamans in hunter-gatherer societies is to know what to gather about the plant kingdom. Also, and at least as important, perhaps more so, to have an understanding of animals and animal spirits, where animals are, how to hunt animals, where to find animals for hunting, and how to maintain the right kind of balance between the human and the animal worlds. So they're like intermediates between the human and the non-human realms. And by going into trance and being open to visionary experiences, they're able to connect the rest of the community with these other realms. So they're intermediates. They're often people who are somewhat abnormal psychologically, and of course some shamanic traditions involve to other realms of reality or experience. So I think this rise in shamanism comes in part through a need to reconnect with these other realms of nature. I think that this also lies at the root of organized religions. I mean, at the heart of every religious tradition we find an experience of these other realms, or many experiences. In some ways Jesus was like a shaman. He had healing powers, he had visions of other realms. In the Christian creed it talks about his journey down into the underworld after the crucifixion. In his enlightenment was sitting under a tree, and he went through these forms of asceticism and living in forests with Indian hermits. They typically live in wild nature to seek for their inspiration. His final enlightenment happened sitting under a peepal tree, a sacred tree. Again, a very shamanic theme. So we can find, I think, in the large organized religions, many of these themes. Muhammad is supposed to have channeled the Quran from one place to another, and had encounters with angels who revealed things to him. So the founders of all the great religions, and the Hindu sages and sannyasins, are visionaries who, you could say, take the shamanic thing a step further, and it puts it in a more codified form, and then it gets written down in books and becomes the basis of an institutionalized form of religion. I think organized human cultures probably need institutional forms of religion with the rituals and the seasonal festivals that hold the community together and bind the whole social life to the cycles of nature, as our festivals still do in the Christian world or in the Jewish world or in the Muslim world. The Muslim world's interesting actually because those festivals are around and don't have a close relationship to the solar cycles of nature, but are directly linked to a lunar calendar, so they're much more in tune with the lunar rhythms than other religions, which are in their seasonal calendars. So I think that these the shamanic impulse and the shamanic experience is probably far older. Well, it
Sounds like
it's this direct experience,
but
which
there's a
I
lot
think
out
is
there
at the
these
heart
days.
of all religion.
And that's cool. That's cool
all
too.
religious insight. And that's the starting point, I think, for all kinds of religion, and it can be continually renewed through personal experience and is being renewed again today.
So a wonderful, wonderful video about shamanism. Rupert Sheldrake, The Rise of Shamanism, absolutely amazing. Now, before we start anything, we're just going to go and introduce our guest for today, because we have to talk about shamanism, and that's why she's here to talk to us. So here we go. Colleen is the author of 5 books, holds a master's degree, and is a licensed professional counselor, licensed social worker, Uzui Reiki master, certified clinical hypnotherapist, certified alternative healing consultant, and shamanic practitioner. She has been exploring health and wellness, self-healing, personal growth, and spiritual development for over 25 years. She is a teacher and a healer who knows from personal experience what it's like to be devastatingly ill, fatigued, depressed, frustrated, and lost. For 10 years, Colleen was one of the hopeless who suffered from a chronic illness that traditional medicine could not effectively treat. Determined to live a life fully, she embarked in a journey of self-healing and spiritual awakening that led to complete recovery and a comprehensive program that benefits all who follows it. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome my guest today on Witch Talk, Colleen Deatsman. Hello, Colleen. How are you?
I'm great. Hello, Kerrigan, and all. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's wonderful. It's a pleasure to have you with us, talking about this wonderful, wonderful tradition of that shamanism is, and we're going to talk about also the things connected with shamanism. Now, we just saw an interview with Dr. Rupert Sheldrake, The Rising of Shamanism. He was a biologist. He is a biologist. He can't just, not be one. He is a biologist, and he's also very involved in religion and how and understanding the religions in the world. But now, you have a fantastic book called The Hollow Bone: A Field Guide to Shamanism, and it's very, very impressive, and it's absolutely amazing. It's one of the best books in shamanism I ever read. It's very, very. I have to say that it's very genuine, very wonderful. It has so much information in it that it's amazing. Now, the one thing that I wanted to ask you about is what brought you to shamanism. That's the first question.
Okay. Well, thank you for your kind words about the book. I really appreciate that. That's good to
You're
know.
welcome.
It's such a gift that Spirit just uses me as the vessel and writes what they need, what the people need. So it's fantastic to be a part of this. So, what brought me to this is, I'll try to make it real brief. I've always known that I'm different from everyone else. I spent a lot of time in the woods and love nature. I'm very different from many of my female peers. I don't go shopping and things like that. So, growing up really very connected to the earth and doing a lot of camping and hunting and fishing and things. My family was very involved in that. But I would see that there was more going on in nature than they did. And I just learned to accept that and to be kind of quiet. And then as a teenager, I began to have a lot of visions in my dreams, a lot of, shamanic dreams, so to speak. And then I started reading everything I could get my hands on of Native Americans and mountain men and stuff like that. There was a huge draw for me, and it was because I really wanted that kind of spirituality and that connection. And I grew up in a very rural, middle-class, Republican, Catholic, not family, but town in Michigan. And so, that just wasn't something that was there, and so it was something I craved. And then I kind of set that aside as I got busy with life and went to college and became a counselor and all. And then I'm very athletic, so I was doing marathons and triathlons, and I began to get very sick and ended up with chronic fatigue, immune deficiency, and fibromyalgia, and hypothyroidism, and hypoglycemia, and asthma, and it was just destroying my life. And I started looking for any witch doctor in the world that could cure me, and it led me to shamanism, where I found that the witch doctor is within ourselves. And so that's kind of the short of how I got here.
Wow, that's amazing. Now, tell me, when did this happen? So we're talking about, how old were you when this happened?
With the illness or the other?
Yeah.
Yeah, the illness, let's see, oh my goodness, now, that was, I was 29, and it really began to get severe right around 30 through about 32, so this is about 20 years ago, and they did not know what caused any of these kinds of things, and I'm not sure that they still do. Allopathically, I know shamanically that there's a lot of things involved with loss of energy and power and soul and so forth. But so there was no medical diagnosis. Fortunately, I had a wonderful doctor who did not do what a lot of doctors did with folks at that time with the same diagnosis, which was to put people on antibiotics and antidepressants. My doctor wasn't about that. He was really, he himself was exploring hypnosis and things like that, so I was very lucky. But essentially, after a couple of years of trying to figure out what was going on, I was first then diagnosed with Epstein-Barr virus, and then a while later, cytomegalovirus, and supposedly all these things contribute to the kind of symptomology that I was having, and so, on one of these visits, good news is we know what it is. Bad news is there's nothing we can do about it. You're going to have to go home and live with this. That's when the fighter in me said, what?
No,
I don't think so.
Exactly. No.
And it was the impetus that got me really looking at what's going on. And then I went for massage and acupuncture and Reiki, and then I started getting my own training. As a person with a master's degree and a licensed professional counselor, I knew that I could bring these things into my world as well as into my practice, and so started devouring every book that was out there and every training I could get my hands on, and it just went from there, which was difficult initiation, but a wonderful journey.
Absolutely.
Looking back.
Now, tell me one thing. I mean, Dr. Rupert Sheldrake just defined shamanism, or shaman, there is, as a mediator between the worlds, and also a mediator between nature and man. Do you agree with this?
I do. I very much agree with it. And I also take that a little further in the description. When I sat down to work on the hollow bone, I thought, how am I going to describe this amazing, vast thing that's not a thing? And what became clear to me was that shamanism is actually a verb, not a noun. It's about action. It's about what is done. And it's incredibly practical. And it is really always about connecting with one's soul, or what some people call higher self or authentic self. I've always been shown by the spirits that it's soul self, and connecting with the spirits, that the spirits are with us all the time and always, and that connection is incredibly powerful, and absolutely nature. There are so many energies. Some are spirits, some are just energies in nature that we can connect with, and the shaman is often seen as the bridge and the go-between for folks, although we all have the innate ability to make those connections should we choose to.
Now, this might be a very simple question, but I think that some people have this misconception. What is the difference between a medium and a shaman?
I think it's more about the technology of how that's reached. I've really explored this as well, because I've had several students in my apprenticeships who are mediums,
yes,
who talk about having a lot deeper, more expressive experiences in their shamanic journeys than they have in their mediumship work. So, it's similar but different from what I gather.
Yes.
Yeah. So
I think that technique-wise, must be different. I mean, do we talk about rituals in shamanism? Is it what it is? Is it a ritual?
It is. It is.
Yes.
Every time we journey, every time we connect with spirit, it's actually, we talk about it more in the terms of it's a ceremony. But, ceremony, ritual, same difference in my opinion. It's a matter of semantics. And so, and that's a bit different with a medium who is simply opening up to be the vessel of communication, where in shamanism we're actually going on the journey. And it's also about us going part way out there to meet with the spirits, where in mediumship, from my understanding, tends to be more that the soul or the spirit comes to the person here, although that happens in shamanism too. And a lot of shamans actually do the same function as mediums in connecting with loved ones, and especially in doing the psychopomp work, which is where we connect with souls of folks who have the physical body has died, but they've not yet crossed over. So similar function, I think, just a different technology of making that connection.
Now, shamanism is one of those practices, and you said and very well that shamanism is not really a noun, but it's a verb. An action verb that is cross-cultural. So we find shamans in the Iberian Peninsula. We find shamans in America. We find shamans in India. We find shamans everywhere. And the word shaman, actually, it's very interesting because it comes from a very specific origin, and we just use that word, but it in fact it's particular to one region. Now we found shamans in Siberia. We found shamans everywhere. Now, why is this so universal? What do you think? I mean, did you ever thought about this being so universal? Why do you think that this is so universal? Because it is shamanism in itself, universal.
Actually, I've thought a lot about this and really looked at this. Supposedly in our teachings, we're taught that shamanism is actually the foundation of religions. Shamanism itself is not a religion. It's a way of living and a way of being, and is a practice and certain technologies and modalities that then religions have grown out of. People have been practicing shamanism since before people were people. Not too long ago, in fact, I wrote about this in the book, they actually found a Neanderthal grave with a man with the jaguar cape and tools. Clearly, he was a shaman. So it looks like shamanism has been with humanity forever. The other reason I think that it's all around the world and still very alive and present today is because it's very practical. It works. Because it's very idiosyncratic to every situation, and is different every time the shaman journeys, depending on the spirits they're connecting with, the intention of the journey, the clients that they're working with, whether that's an individual client or a community or, the earth as a whole or whatever. So because it's practical and works, it's going to stay around. It's going to stay alive, and therefore is alive everywhere around the world.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, I think also, this is my theory. I don't know what do you think about this in terms of. Sometimes I have theories about shamanism and why do we find shamanism all over? Because there is a human inherited necessity to communicate with the other world and to communicate with spirits, and obviously spirits are or have the capacity to help us. So anything that has to do with helping, being that health or wealth or whatever it is that we want, and that we can have that help. It's what we do. It's inherited into our genes wherever we go. I mean, Africa doesn't matter, Europe, America doesn't matter. So that's my theory. I don't know. It's inherited.
I absolutely agree with your theory. I think it really is. It's not only in our DNA, it's a part of who we are, because we're not separate.
Yes.
We really are all connected. Everyone and everything are relatives, and everyone, I don't care what religion you are, in my theory, understands that there's more to this world than what we see and feel. And, and that we do communicate with spirit, and we do communicate with souls that are no longer in a body. And people want to take a look at that and explore that and understand that, and then absolutely pull in any energies that will help them in whatever it is that they're struggling with, be that abundance or love or help or whatever that may be. So it really is an inherent kind of thing. In shamanism, we talk about that we are not separate from nature. We are nature. And I think we know that. We just may not remember that we know that.
All the time. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, Colleen Deatsman, am I pronouncing your name correctly?
You are, yes.
All right. Okay, Colleen Deatsman, The Hollow Bone, A Field Guide to Shamanism. She has more books. We're going to talk about them also, but we're going to focus on this one first, with foreword by Sandra Ingerman. Now, this book is absolutely extraordinary. I have to thank Wiser Books once again to send us this fantastic book. It's Wiser Books. So if you want to purchase this book, which I recommend, and this is the thing. I mean, you don't need to be practicing shamanism, or I just want. It's an informal book. It's wonderful, but if you do have that call, if you do have that ability, and if you recognize that ability, the book is also for you, because it has things in it that can help you as a starting point. Now, one of the things that really, really is very important for me is healing. And for you too, I'm sure.
Absolutely.
Yes, because I'm studying to be a nurse, so for me it's really fascinating. So
good for you. That's
I
great.
know. I love it. I love it. So, and I really try sometimes to understand health and how things can work in other ways, being in the set of, for instance, a hospital or something like that, and how can you perceive, and how people perceive you. I had various experience of patients that are really very unresponsive. They know that they can't communicate, but they do recognize you in some way, which is very strange. People that are very ill, and they recognize you as someone, I don't know what they see, but they really see something in you. Did you have any of this experience? I had this, several times in a bed. Someone that are either unresponsive because they have some cerebral problems, but they do recognize something in me, which is very interesting. This recognition, is it the light? Is it energy? Is it, what is it? We don't know. I don't really can quite grasp it, but I think that it's very interesting that there are always a connection between human beings, even though they do not really know or can quite have a name for it. And there's a lot of theories about this, that we are all connected, and if you look in a long time to the back of the neck of somebody, that somebody will turn around and look at you. So it's kind of like, we are all connected. It's a big net, and I do believe that net extends far beyond this world, and it goes into the other one. But some of us have the boat to actually go there, and and kind of seek help and talk to the spirits and beings of the other realms. Now, tell me, how is the mechanics of this? How does shamanism work? Describe to me, how is the procedure? So you go into trance. How you do it? How do you travel? What is the technique?
Yeah, and I think it's really great that you brought up what you're experiencing in working with folks, because those folks are able to sense beyond the normal five senses that we're thinking about, that most people use because of the condition that they're in.
Yes.
And really, all of us have that ability. We just tend to really shut it down and shut it out because we're so overstimulated with everything in our world, fluorescent lights and sounds and chemicals and working so much and all that kind of stuff. So we don't really notice how much we're filtering. And so when you're working with a person like that, they may be seeing, but they're also feeling. And what we talk about in shamanism is really, when we see, we're not necessarily seeing anything. We might not even be having visualizations. Some of the things I know don't see anything in their journeys, but they feel everything. It's incredibly kinesthetic, and it's what I call, I wrote about this in, Seeing in the Dark, I think. It's called the felt sense, which is the combination of all of our senses, including those five that we're used to, and some people call it the sixth sense, but I think it's even beyond that. It's bigger than that. Our whole body and our whole energy field is like a tuning fork. We sense, and we can pick up vibrations, and we can see others, and so that's what I feel like is happening when you're talking about what someone is sensing, that they see in you or they feel in you, and they feel that comfort. They know that you're someone that they're safe with and they can connect with, and how that's done in shamanism, the mechanics of that is, it's really a very energetic, connecting with energy body to energy body, and most people begin with learning how to journey, to go into trance, because the conscious critical mind kind of gets in the way of us interpreting or, allowing us to experience that, unless, of course, we were brought up in a shamanic community where more people do that, and that's the norm. But in typical modern society, we're running around at a very high brainwave frequency, and we're shutting out everything around us. So we learn how to go into trance and go into the journey to first go into an altered state where we can be receptive and perceptive, and there from which we can travel to connect with helping spirits if needed, because a lot of times they're right here with us too, so we don't have to travel. But yeah, so that really is, in the beginning particularly, the mechanism, and what most schools of thought are with shamanism, is to learn how to go into trance and to make that connection. And the more one does that, the more then that generalizes over into the everyday life, to where one is more awakened and aware and perceptive 24/7, 365, without even going into a journey. But for some of us, it takes the rewiring in order to tap into those things that most people have been taught to ignore all their lives. There really aren't fairies in the ceiling of your bedroom, and there is no monster under the bed, and invisible friends aren't real, and we have to get retrained to say, oh yeah, that is there.
Yes, exactly. Now, one of the most amazing questions that I came across about shamanism, and people trying to kind of figure it out, this is we all know that the goes to the other world to seek contact with the other world or with other world spirits and beings to help the living sometimes, and to help whatever it is, or to seek help or counseling or whatever it is, or power or whatever, healing power, etc. But do they need us also? You know what I mean? Is this just one direction thing, or I mean, are we the hopeless ones, or do they need us also?
That's a great question. They do need us. We really all work together. We're all evolving, and in the spirits who are helping us, we are helping them as well, and so we are all moving and growing in that connection. And for how many of us really feel very much in love with our work, and it brings us so much joy and energy. The helping spirits are there. This is their work. This is what they do. This is what they've chosen to do, because they could come back or they could go someplace else, but they choose to be there and be with us and do whatever help they can. And so even though they're not necessarily emotional in the way that we are, it still brings them energy and joy, and helps them to evolve and grow as well. Whenever we're of service to someone else, it helps them grow. And while they're in service of the folks that they're working with, that helps them grow too. At least that's the understanding that seems to be the norm from all the shamans I've talked with. And that's my personal experience. But I'm also always asking questions like this of my peers and colleagues. And, I'm on all these groups on Facebook, too, saying, what do you think about this? And what do you know about this? And what you were taught? And, because it's absolutely vast. No one's an expert, but we all are experts, and it's fascinating.
Yes. Yes. And it's made of experience. Now, the question is, and it comes from the chat room, how do you establish trance? And then through ritual, how do you maintain it? This is one of those questions that can go very easily to hallucinogenics, and people have this preconception also, oh, she's a shaman, she should be smoking pot. You know what I mean? It's this kind of, or taking something to kind of go through trance. How does this all work? Because, people sometimes have this preconceptions about shamanism. Yes, it's true. We know that. Anthropologically, we do know that psychotropics were used in various societies. I mean, and still today. They are still used, in tribes, to obtain trance and all of that. How do we Westerns manage this, Colleen?
It really varies, and that's one of the things I love about shamanism is there are no rules and there are no ways that it absolutely has to be. Some shamans really do work with plant spirit medicine, and they use the ethnogens of those, and that is their mode of transportation, where many others will use a sonic driver such as a rattle or a drum or didgeridoo or certain forms of music or dance or singing, or so there are many, many ways depending on what one really feels connected to and the guidance from their helping spirit. So it can vary throughout a shaman's life. I know people that have began with the drumming and then use ethnogens or do a combination thereof, or some who have been guided to absolutely not do the ethnogens, perhaps because they have already experimented. Many shamans are very familiar with altered states of consciousness, and it is incredibly typical for someone on the shamanic path to have probably at least not, if not experimented, abused and been addicted to certain substances, which is only a part of the calling. hey,
Yes.
I need to connect with these other worlds, and I need to shut out this world so that I can get quiet enough to get there. And it's a very natural way. So, so, there are just many, many different ways of that happening.
Now, the other thing is, I have this cartoon in my head, and I'm sure that you're going to laugh about it, that a shaman is drumming in order to get into trance, and then it gets to trance, and it stops drumming, and now he's stuck. He can't continue because, he just lets go of the drum, and everything is, he's locked in. And this is another preconception about, what about if we can't come back?
Yeah, that's a good question, and it's a couple of things. One is I drum for myself all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I journey, and I will drum and drum and drum and drum and drum, and then at some point I'm not drumming anymore, and I'm on my journey, and then eventually I will come back. And of course I do these in times when it doesn't matter what time I come back, but the ego will almost always bring us back. And the almost always, of course, is an operative word, because there are some people who sometimes really don't want to be here or are very connected with the other world. And so things can happen where when they go into the journey, they might choose to stay there. Mm-hmm. One of my teachers had someone pass away in one of his classes. And it was actually, they all, of course, it was kind of a traumatic experience, and everyone journeyed, and Spirit said that person really just did not want to be here, wanted to go, even though they were a joyful person who loved their life and everything. It was time to go.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So that can happen sometimes. There are times where someone can get lost, and that's why in the beginning it's particularly important to work with a group or work with a teacher until you have a foothold, until you also have developed a relationship with the helping spirits that will help you to come back. And now an interesting story along this line is I know people who have wished that they could go and have gone into journey and said to Spirit, please take me. And Spirit says, no, you're going back. You're not done there yet. So.
Yes. Well, I have a story I told you when we were talking a little bit earlier, behind the scenes. Yes, we do things behind the scenes. And it's a story about a friend of mine. I mean, he had a lady friend who, she and her husband went into this journey with a group of shamans, and she wished to, she was very keen about, shamanism, and she wanted to try to travel and all of that. And the husband was, pragmatic, but he was, respectful and everything. So she went, and what happened is what I told you, is that she was never the same after that, and she really kind of almost like went into this almost constant trance-like state, very fixed eyes in the horizon, and eventually she died. With the heart just stopped. So it was very strange to see her in that, and the question was, did they do it correctly? Did she want it to stay, or was it some kind of error? How important is for us to dominate the technique in order to really travel well?
Yeah, that's a really tough question, because the main thing that you want to do in shamanic travel is let go so that you can travel. Mm-hmm. And yet that's a weird juxtaposition of do I need to maintain some kind of connection? There's a couple of things here with this. I would ask, and maybe you don't know, if there was any predisposing kind of illness or issues that she had going on, if she had any kind of depression or things like that where she might choose to go. But also, in a case like that, I would recommend that instantly that husband gets with some other, either those shamans or other shamans to journey to find out what's going on. Where is she?
Yes.
what's happening,
Yes.
to continue to explore, because it is possible that she found that to be a much more comforting place to be than here, and perhaps she wasn't able to communicate that,
Yes.
or perhaps something else happened where she just didn't find herself her way back, which is rare, but it can happen. And
Yes.
so, yeah, I mean, I would definitely have followed through with what's going on here.
Mm-hmm.
Not everyone wants to be here, and we can't always control that. We've had people come in for healing, but when I get into the journey, the helping spirits tell me they don't really want a healing. They just came here because their family wanted them to come for healing, but they're really ready to go. And we have to respect that. And maybe she was in that place, maybe not. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But there is, especially in learning how to journey, there is a specific discipline of how you go to the lower world and how you go to the upper world. And you really need to follow that for a while to know your way, to create those pathways. And as you establish the relationships with the helping spirits that will help you with those travels, so that you're not just out there wandering.
Yes.
And one would also then question what energies did she connect with while she was there, that caused her to stay or not, and that could be on a soul level a very positive, maybe her ready to go.
No, it's very interesting because we don't really know. I don't have all the details, but I do believe that there was a lack of understanding of what happened, and they just kind of panicked, and eventually she died. So, but the husband, I'm sure that she was, she went to doctors, and after that and all of that, nobody could find anything on her, and everything was fine.
Level.
Yeah. So I thought that it was poorly managed, probably because he didn't know what to do. He really didn't know what to do. Now, thinking about that and about a hardcore shamanism, if such a thing exists, what is your opinion about Carlos Castaneda? that was a bad question. It was kind of naughty. I know.
It's actually a lovely question.
Oh, it is.
In my opinion, and this is my opinion,
of course,
Carlos Castaneda was not a shaman.
Okay.
The sorcerer, and I'll tell you the difference.
Yes.
In my opinion, all shamans are sorcerers also.
Yes.
Sorcery is not bad. Sorcery happens all the time. We all source energy for different intentions. Shamans source energy to help the community or to help a client heal, or for something that is moving forward. Carlos Castaneda sourced energy for his own personal use.
Yes.
That's not shamanism.
Yes. Now, this is I'm asking you this because sometimes I have these difficult questions to my guests, and I have to give one each time, so I kind of think about them very thoroughly. And I thought that this was one that you would be very pleased to hear. Now, the other thing is that Carlos Castaneda, sometimes it's a holy grail of shamanism for many people.
Yes,
you know
I
what
know.
I mean?
No,
Yeah.
and he was for me. I devoured all of those books.
Yes.
And I learned a lot. And I learned a lot about what really isn't appropriate and what isn't the right way to do this. But you also learn a lot of things in there that are really positive. You take those energy that he teaches in those books and use that for your own healing or to help a client or whatever, and it's incredibly powerful. So it's not wrong or bad. It's just it comes down to intention, as everything does, in my opinion. And his intention was to be able to die without dying. So he sourced energy and other people's energies for that purpose.
Yeah. Now tell me, let's go beyond Carlos Castaneda now.
I would have loved to have met him. I would have loved to have had this conversation. So,
I know,
and I appreciate that question because Carlos is definitely out there, and there's a lot of powerful teaching with that. So
yes, it's true.
It's just, what are you going to do with that? And every person has to decide that for themselves.
No, absolutely. Now, tell me one thing. In relation to the perception of the other world, do you think that this is something that is very personal? That it's not really something that it's set up when you go there? Oh, there is, it's green. And someone else in Brazil goes there and, oh, it's green. So it's always the same thing, or it's a very personal perception. And the other question is how shamanism perceives the various levels. You talked about the upper level, the lower level. How is this work? How does this work, and what is the map?
Yeah, it's very interesting. This is one of the things that in my training we started to really, and we were all mapping our journeys to see if it was idiosyncratic or if it was collective. And it was fascinating to find that it was, of course, a combination of both, overlapping. And so then one would question, well, is this really a place outside of us, or is this a place inside of us? And when you bring in the psychology of all of this, and especially if you're into any of the Jungian things and Joseph Campbell, you begin to look at, well, it's all the same. What difference does it make? And it's fascinating that we've been looking at lower world and upper world, and one of the things that's happening a lot is it's been about perception. And I think as we're evolving, our perception is evolving, and people are talking about it feels like the worlds are beginning to really overlap, and that's perhaps part of the evolution of consciousness that so many people are talking about, and the shifting of energies. I just know in my journeys that it really is very much overlapping, and it's very much overlapping this world to where the middle world is really a part of the other worlds, and maybe it always has been. When you look at the very archaic image of the tree of life being the roots in the lower world and the trunk in the middle world and the branches in the upper world that connect us all, perhaps that's always been there, and maybe shamans of old have understood that, and we've separated it out. We have done so many things in the swing of using our psychology and medicine and so forth to scrutinize things, to try to understand things. One of the things we've done is sort of separate things out, and it feels to me like there's a coming back together of that. So it might be a perception kind of thing. The places are incredibly very real and very vivid for people, and very personal and very intimate. And it's really fascinating when you're in a group of people and someone has mapped exactly where you go, and you stand there and say, "Oh my God, that's my place," and that's happening a lot.
Yes. That's very interesting. Now the thing is that I want to ask you a few questions about if from your journeys that from your experience that actually you came to realize that this was revealed to you, this is something that the spirits told you, or that you figured out because you did something or some journey for a specific purpose that actually revealed that to you. One of the questions that I have is that, do we really come back? Meaning, are we really reincarnating over and over again? Did you happen to know this?
Yes. My spirit guidance is that we always, our soul has that choice, and that we, when we pass from this life, we go back to wherever it is that we come from, and that's different places for many people. A lot of people have the perception that that's above and that's heaven, but that's not always the case. There are many, many cultures that believe we come from the earth, and so we go back to ground zero, so to speak, and we do, as a soul, have that choice. And there are a lot of places besides Earth. You know, we're a little arrogant to think that this is the only place there is. And
Yes.
in my experience, souls can choose to, you know, go to Pleiades or go beyond this universal system that we don't even know anything about, or choose to come back here as a spirit and be a guardian spirit of the Grand Canyon or the Himalayas, or be a helping spirit for someone else. That it is choice, and it is a part of what that soul needs to experience, and also what is needed. That's what I've been shown. So.
Oh, that's great. That's a great answer. Now, what was the most amazing thing that spirits revealed to you ever? That you thought at the time you thought, oh my.
For me, it was that we really truly are energy. That it's all about energy.
Yes.
The body is energy. The chair we're sitting in is energy. The walls are energy. The sky is energy. You know, I think, you know, I started out going to college for biology. I was going to go into wildlife management, or ichthyology, which is the study of fish.
Yes.
Some people wouldn't know what that is. You know, so I you know, approached things from a very scientific place.
Yes.
You know, had been through physics and advanced math and all that kind of stuff. And
Yes.
so, and then ended up through spiritual guidance, ending up working with people as a counselor. And then, of course, with my own illness, there was no scientific reason really for my illness and what was going on. And of course, I definitely looked at the emotional, psychological things and began to release the baggage and stuff, which is a huge, important thing that all shamans need to do. You have to unload your own stuff and your own perceptions in order to be the hollow bone, so that spirit moves through you. But
Yes.
for me, the real revelation was to really see and experience on a very deep level in my journeys what I really was as an energy being, and to have journeys where my body would be dismembered and disintegrate, and I would just be in that journey, just my soul, just this pure, free-floating energy.
Yes.
And that
Yes.
that was a real revelation for me, that it's not just about this identification that we have with this physical body and this physical life that we live and so forth. And yes, that's important and shouldn't be ignored, but it needs to be in balance with understanding that we are this energetic being. And I almost hate saying these words because it's sounding so cliche.
I know.
These days where people talk about you're a spiritual being having a human
Yes.
experience, it just makes me want to puke.
I
But,
know.
you know, but it really was a very powerful thing for me, and they showed
Yes.
me that in very vivid colors and in a specific exercise that I was to do every day, 3 times a day, until I got well. And it was called the Rainbow Fountain, and I would bring up this energy from the earth into my body, and it would mix with the different chakras of my body. But I was shown there were a lot more than 7 chakras, and that they correlate with the layers of the energy body that extend out from us as well. And then that energy would all mix together, and upper world energy would come in, and middle world and sun and nature energy would come in and mingle together, and then shoot through me like this fountain. And it's one of the things that I describe in several of my books that was absolutely incredibly powerful for me. It was so healing, but also so revealing to just see myself as that energy kind of thing. And then it was real funny when I was working on one of the books and shared this with a friend who was doing some editing. He said, "Oh, that's just like the middle pillar in esotericism." And I said, "Well, hey, go figure. You know, the spirits know about esotericism. I don't. You know, so I mean, it was really one of those places again where you know you have that profound realization of this is all it's all similar but different perhaps, in
Yes.
perception.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
So in the shamanic perception, or in the point of view of a shaman, what is disease?
Disease is a blockage of energy, or a leakage of energy, or a manifestation in the physical body of some sort of imbalance. And that, you know, I've been shown that that's energetic. Some people will call that spiritual. For me, it's a matter of semantics. It's the same kind of thing. You know, illnesses will come in to our energy field first. And when we don't do something to amend that or bring things back into balance, we have illness. And I see the same in communities. It's the same kind of thing where that community is an organism, and when things are out of balance, then there's a dis-ease or an illness that begins to happen in that culture or in that community that can then be shifted spiritually and energetically.
Yes, yes. So it's very much like Reiki, isn't it? I mean, or Tai Chi. I mean, all of this conceptions of what is disease and why, and it's all about energy. I mean, I think that the Chinese and Japanese got it down.
Absolutely, and Qigong too. You know, all of it. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, they did. So one of the things that I wanted to ask you is about you know, all of the things that you can do to heal people. You know, how do you do it? Do you invite the person to a journey with you to the other world? Do you go with the person, or does the person has to go alone and receive whatever it is on the other side and come back? Is this guided? How does this happen?
Well, again, it varies because there are no rules in Shamanism. It's always going to vary. But you know what I do in my practice is a person schedules an appointment with me, or sometimes we do this in circle of with folks that have been through similar training, and the person talks about the struggles that they're experiencing. It's important for people to share their story, and as people share their story, I see energy begin to loosen and get ready to release. And then we go into the journey, and I invite the client to just simply relax and allow and receive. And so some will just stay here, some will fall asleep, some will go on journeys, some will just go deeply into an altered state and not know where they were or what was going on, but you know, will come out. So we're using the drum. And in these journeys, it's a 35-minute drumming that's in theta state of brainwave frequency, which helps us to connect closer to the soul level. So it gets a person much more relaxed than meditation, unless you're someone who's really, really adept at meditation. Then, you know, but going into that level, the sonic driver helps that to happen. The other thing is the drumming itself releases energies and really begins to shift things for people. In fact, there are just recently some studies coming out, in fact, recently one from the UK, talking about all the benefits just from drumming. And that's not them taking into consideration that the person might be journeying and might be connecting with spirit and so forth. But the drumming itself is incredibly powerful and moving energy. And so the answer would be yes and no and maybe, that the person might go on the journey with you. They might stay here. They might go to their own place in the journey and then come back at the same time you do. And so it really varies, and I've found that it really varies based on how open and ready a person is to experience that kind of experience, and also how safe they feel. Part of the connecting to share the story is also obviously developing relationships and connecting so that you build that safety. And I work with a lot of people, because I'm also a licensed professional counselor, who come in with a lot of of anxiety and depression.
Mm-hmm.
And I have people that will come out of the journey saying that they have never felt so calm in their whole life, and that that's the best medicine for their anxiety they've ever had. And so I they come to a beginning class, I teach them how to journey, and that becomes their new anti-anxiety medication, which of course has no side effects and is much more powerful, and comes over into their own lives. So that's it just varies always from person to person.
Ladies and gentlemen, Colleen Deatsman, the author of the Hollow Bone, A Field Guide to Shamanism. We're talking with her directly, online, live. And you can listen to us a little bit later if you want to, but it's always good to have questions and ask her directly. Isn't that amazing? Now, we're going to see a book, your website, I guess. There's this website that you have here, and it's a wonderful website. Let me see here. It's www.colleendeatsman.com, and that's COLLEENDEATS MAN.com. And you have a lot of other books. I mean, this is just one of them. Let's just go and see a little bit of the books. I think that people can click here and just buy them either in Amazon or anywhere else. You have The Seeing in the Dark, which is very interesting. It's a very interesting book. Now, what is this wonderful book about?
Seeing in the Dark is about how to actually learn how to journey and connect with spirit and connect with nature and do the work yourself for yourself to be your own shaman for you. There are a lot of people around the world who don't have access to a shamanic practitioner or a shaman, and really need this. And there are many people who really need the experiences themselves rather than going to someone else to have it done with them. So this book came out of my experiences of self-shamanism. The trainings that I went to were for my own healing, and then I utilize those in my practices, and certainly do those for others. But it's so powerful to be able to have these experiences and to learn how to do some of these things for yourself. So it actually teaches you how to go in and really look at some of the things that might be holding you back. It teaches you how to journey. It teaches you about energy, about spirits, about some of the common shamanic techniques of extraction and soul retrieval and power retrieval, etc. So it's really the how-to of being your own shaman.
It's called, actually, Claim Your Own Shamanic Power Now in the Coming Age.
Yeah.
And it's a red wheel Wiser again, people. Wiser is just on top of everything. It's amazing.
They're fantastic. I absolutely
amazing?
love working with them.
It's great.
It's
great. They're great.
Yeah.
And they have all of these new books coming out, and it's always a pleasure to read them, not only to read them, but to know about them. And Red Will Wiser, people, if you want to know a little bit more, they have fantastic titles. Just go in and check it out. Red Will Wiser. Now, this is one of them. Then you have another one. You have several books. Energy for Life. It's another one, which is it's another book, right? That you have. Connect with the source. What source, Colleen?
Yeah. Well, the source of all. whatever that may be.
Yes.
That omnipotent conscious source that creates us as well as sustains us. And
yes.
so this book really came out of the journeys that I took on my illness, and then in bringing shamanism into my practice, the spirits would bring in all of these energy-moving exercises, for lack of a better term. They're not visualizations. They're not really exercises either, but there's over 100 of them in this book that are just very clearly written. They were given to me like the one I described earlier, the Rainbow Fountain, which is an incredible energy moving experience. And these were brought throughout the years of my personal healing and in working with clients, and then was told by the spirits that this wasn't just for this particular client, but needed to be shared with others. And so it came into this book that's a very, it's like triage. If anyone is having energy issues or illness issues, it gets right into this is what you can do. And it's really simple and really easy. You don't even have to take any time out of your day. You just need to read these exercises so that you know what they are, and then visualize them anywhere you are, driving down the road, doing dishes, whatever it is that you do. And I can share a little story about this, that back in the day when this was happening, I was working for an agency here in Michigan, working with children who were in foster care and adoptive situations, and I was doing home visits as a counselor. And so, these are kids that have been through a lot. Yes. And energetically, they have a lot going on, which I didn't even realize at the time because it was very new in my experience with working with energy. And in this one particular family, I was working with 4 children from different homes that had come through abuse and neglect into this home. They were all, of course, every diagnosis in the book, ADHD, everything else. And here I am suffering from chronic fatigue, immune deficiency, and fibro, and whatever. I'm zapped. And so I had about a half an hour drive to their home, and I would do some of these visualizations in my mind. I would just set my intention on these and do these as I drove there. I would get there, and I would feel fantastic. I might have felt terrible when I left, and I would feel fantastic. And the kids would be so excited to see me, and they would just calm down immediately. And the mom would say, I don't know what it is that you do to these kids, but could you move in? So, it's really pretty amazing. And I think we don't think about the mental chatter that we do in our heads all the time. And for a lot of people, it's a lot of worry, and for a lot of people, it's very negative. Even if it's only about changing what we're thinking and doing something positive, thinking about something that's not creating stress, that's a huge benefit. But then I know, because I've seen in journeys what this actually does in moving the energy energetically, it's incredibly powerful, and it's so simple. People tell me, I don't have time to meditate every day. You don't have to. If you set your intention and your consciousness toward, being that and thinking that in your everyday life as you're doing other things. Anyway, that's where that book came out of.
Very good, very, very good. Now we have other books here. There's more books. Now another one is called Inner Power: 6 Techniques for Increased Energy and Self-Healing. Another book focused on healing and increased energy. A wonderful book also. This is Llewellyn, right? This is Llewellyn.
Yeah, both of those, Inner Power and Energy for Life, are Llewellyn,
Llewellyn, yes. And what is this one about? Well, Inner Power.
Inner Power.
Carrigan.
Actually, Inner Power came out of my first book. It was very interesting when I was going through my healing journey, and I was in soul retrieval training. Put this in about it. Astounded. I mean, I'm arguing with the helping spirits in my journey, saying, first of all, have you seen how big the Catholic Church is in my town? I don't think I'm going to hang a shingle out to do that. and also, I don't know the difference between a noun and a verb. How am I going to write a book? And they just made it very clear to me that this was going to happen, and they showed me an image of myself in a hospital bed, in traction everywhere. I do a lot of bicycling, and they showed me that I would be hit while bicycling, and that would be my next big 2x4 if I didn't pay attention to this. well, having already been through the chronic fatigue, immune deficiency, and fibromyalgia, I figured that was a big enough 2x4, and I could actually believe them. So I came home, hung out the shingle, and then started working with people using self-hypnosis, meditation, shamanic journeying, and so forth. And then I just started putting the book together, and the only place I knew where to start from was my own story. So I started the book of my own story, and it was the first half then became my story, and the second half was how can you do this? Because I'm just all about how can you do it. And at one point, I connected with, if any of you know Tom Cowan, who's a really incredible Celtic shamanic teacher and author. He had an agent who said she would take a look at my book, and she said if I split it in half and just did the how-to book, she would do it, and she would promote it for me. And so I did that, and then she disappeared, which is kind of typical in the publishing world. But she was the angel who facilitated what needed to happen. At that point, nobody wanted the autobiographical stuff. They wanted the how-to. Power had a little bit of my story in it just to personalize it, and also quite a bit of stories from people that I work with, sharings from clients about things that happened for them. And so it covers 6 different needs that can help us overcome illnesses and have a lot more energy. So that's what that one is.
Very good, very good. Now, we have one more to go, and this I believe that it's your first book, Journey to the Wholeness, Personal Healing Through Spirit and Self-Connection.
It is, yeah, it's the one that began the whole thing that ended up getting axed, axed from everybody. But nonetheless, it's a powerful story, and this one is just self-published at this point. Perhaps someday we'll tweak it and it'll be published by someone. But it's a story of, and it's a teaching story. It teaches all the techniques through my experience of what I was going through and what it was like for me. And so, it was the beginning of all of this. So, yeah.
Very good, very good indeed. We do want you to write more books because we need Colleen Deatsman now that Carl Castaneda is dead. Ladies and gentlemen, Colleen Deatsman, forward by Sandra Igzerman, and it's a Wiser book, so you can actually get it. It's absolutely amazing. It's a very wonderful book. Now, one of the things that you say here is that personal healing is one of the things that people have this kind of questions about. Can you heal yourself, and can you do shamanism by yourself? You already talked about that. You do drum alone by yourself. You do drum for yourself, and then the drum stops. No big deal. You're already on the journey. What do you need the drum for? So it's and some
people will use a drumming CD too. They find that easier, so then they can just really check out and go into the journey, or rattling, or didgeridoo, or whatever
it is. Just record it and then play it again. So So the thing is that I think that some of the things that we talked about shamanism are very important. About misconceptions, that people have. That do you really have to use drugs to actually, or psychotropics to actually get into journey? No. So we kind of talked a little bit about everything. Now, is there any future projects for you? Is there any book that we should know of in the future?
Well, Red Wheel Wiser is putting out a new book that is an expansion of a book that they put out in 1993 called Random Acts of Kindness that end up kind of being paid forward. And it's a really beautiful thing that people are doing. They're out, and so they're expanding that and asking for contributions. And so anyone can submit a story about random acts of kindness. only 100 words, so it's a very short story, but nonetheless. So I want to throw that out there that you all can participate in this if you want to. If you go to their website, you can check it out. And I will be contributing to that book, a little story of mine. And I've been working for the past few years on a book that is beginning to take shape. I'm taking a little time off from working with doing healing sessions right now. I'm finishing up some of the apprenticeships that I teach and just spending some time in the woods so that this book can start to really come forth. I envision it to be a book that's 365 days, so it's sort of a condensed each day kind of intention, looking at expanding our awareness and connecting with nature and spirit through various things. I'm a person who's outside every day, no matter what the weather is. I run or hike or bike or whatever. And so I'm kind of wanting to encourage people to go out and do that as well. It doesn't mean you have to be super athletic or whatever, but, you know, anytime we step out of the door into the woods, we can, and so it's coming along, and it may change a lot between now and when it's published, but we'll see where that goes. That's just starting to bubble forth, and Red Will Weiser is very interested. So
that's great.
So hopefully it'll turn out to be a beautiful, kind of daily shamanic walk through life kind of thing.
That's great. That's great. So, where can we find you? Personally, where are you located? Do you do any workshops, anything like that in the future? Where can we find you in the future?
Yeah, the best place to look is at my website, which you had mentioned, www.colleendeatsman.com. Because I'm in various places. Most recently, I've stayed pretty local to home, which is in Mason, Michigan, which is in the Lansing area. But occasionally I am found in other places, and so we'll just see what Spirit brings and where that goes. And so, but the best place that those would be announced would be on my website, and probably the Red Will Weiser site as well. They're very good about posting events for authors.
Yeah, they are. They absolutely are. Well, ladies and gentlemen, Colleen Deatsman, the author of The Hollow Bone, A Field Guide to Shamanism, and many other books, you know that you can actually access to her website through www.colleendeatsman.com, and that's COLLEENDEATSMAN.com, and many books to look for and read about shamanism. And can they contact you, right? They can, right?
Sure, yes, absolutely. Through the website, my email is there. And also, I would point out on the website that there are lots of articles, too.
Yes,
so
they are.
It's a lot of information there about all kinds of self-healing things, Reiki, meditation, self-hypnosis, and, of course, journeying and shamanism, and so.
Yes, very good, very good. Now, before we go, I would like to talk a little bit about self-hypnosis, because I think that it's very important, and it's one of the things that takes a little bit out of course this talk about shamanism, but I think that it's important. So what is it about, and how can you do it, and what is the benefit of it?
Yeah, actually it's interesting, because in my work of all of this healing, I'm finding that nothing is really out of context or separate.
Yes,
we might have a different name for it, but a lot of self-hypnosis is actually self-journeying, and so it's we're going in to connect with ourself and those deeper places within, and that's really what it's all about. So self-hypnosis was one of the things that was incredibly helpful for me, where I would really look at the issues that I was dealing with, and then I would record my own, at the time, cassette tape. That's how old this is. It was before digital recorders and CDs, and so I was recording on a tape player the different suggestions that I needed in order to not only shift my conditionings from my childhood and culture and so forth to become healthier and perhaps more positive or whatever, but to really also go in a hypnotic state and look at some of the issues and things that were holding me back. Anytime that we go into an altered state, in my opinion and in my experience, we get a clearer picture of what's really going on, and we can find sometimes the root causes of some of these things that we keep going around and around and around about. Everybody can say, things will come up and they'll say, oh my God, I had thought I had dealt with that. I thought that was done. Why is that there? That's a thing that you would look at, and, with just a little bit of know-how, you can go in and create your own self-hypnotic tape to listen to that can help you get to the bottom of those things and release those things and begin to have a more positive and healthy outlook.
Absolutely. Amazing. Colleen Deatsman, shamanic practitioner and author of The Hollow Bone and Field Guide to Shamanism and so many other books. Incredible conversation. Thank you so much, Colleen, for being on Witch Talk. And
Thank you so much for having me.
Give us the pleasure of sharing your wisdom and your art and the way you do it and why you do it and how you do it. So thank you so much for being on Witch Talk, and it was a pleasure to have you.
Thank you. It was a very much pleasure to be here and meet you and talk with you. It was great.
Thank you so much. Don't go anywhere. Don't hang up, because I'm going to talk to you after the show. I'm just going to wrap it up, okay? Colleen.
Okay, great.
All right, hang on. Okay, so that's it, guys. Thank you so much for being on the show. Everybody in the chat room, thank you so much, and for participating on the show. Now, next week we'll have more guests, and obviously they will be wonderful guests. Until then, have a wonderful week. Bye.